All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to the Artifact Alchemy Podcast. That is right, episode number 2 is here. And you know, when we did our first podcast, we made a point, we're not going to do these that frequently. We're only going to really do them when there's big news or a big tournament happens or whatever, and when it just makes sense to do. Well, it makes sense to do. As of 30 minutes ago, I want to say, we're going right into this. We made a point to get this podcast show in here. A patch came out, and let's just say it's, as we were kind of, before we went to the recording here, we're basically calling it the actual launch of Artifact is what just happened here with this patch. So obviously I'm Breaking CBK, joined by the one and only Elevated here. First off, how you doing this fine evening?
I'm good. I'm wanting to go play some Artifact.
My bad.
But first we must talk about it.
Yes, first we must talk about it, I know. Yeah, obviously I don't expect this to take too long here, but all right, I think it's safe to say let's just jump into it. So, you know, to say the least, there's been a fair amount of complaints towards the game. Now, again,
that's putting it very likely, sir.
Yeah, that's fair.
There has been an insane amount of outrage about everything about the game, pretty much.
Yeah, and a lot of it, there's an understanding where people are coming from, kinda, but at the same time, it's also a case of, one, for me, my thing has always been, I enjoy the game. I personally I've enjoyed Artifact since I started playing it. I understand that this whole progression system that people wanted, that you and I, in fact, that was really the one thing that stood out to both of us in their first podcast. So that we agreed on, but things like the whole balancing changes and whatever else, the economy, it's like, okay, if anything, Valve will figure it out eventually, but personally, I don't care enough about that to let it affect me enjoying the game. Where it seemed like so many people are out there were just very negative, you know, saying like they had only one chance, they blew it, and now the game's dead, blah, blah, blah. That's not the case, though.
It's not how things work anymore.
No.
It's not like Artifact was released on a CD and sold in Walmarts, and that's all you get, and there's no internet. It's like the game is. I mean, all games are in an incredibly malleable form right now. We saw that with Fortnite, right? They released this crazy, ridiculous sword that was super OP, and they released it right before their huge tournament, and then they took it away because they realized it was an awful game design decision.
We can make changes on the fly, and for me, the biggest thing with all this is that it's Valve we're talking about. Now, I understand they haven't always made perfect decisions in every decision they've ever made, but this is a very, very large video game company that I personally, I know you did, and many others out there, no doubt, have faith in them that, okay, sure, maybe it wasn't this fullest game that everyone expected from the very beginning, but these additions and changes were going to happen eventually. I did not expect it to happen until at least after the new year. I'll say that right off the bat. However, that leads us now into what I'm going to show you guys once again here. A patch came out today. There was one last week as well. Of course, it was a much, much more minimal patch that released a couple things like an automatic tournament system, which was pretty cool in itself, in theory and everything. But people were fiending changes such as balance changes, you know, what the take was ultimately going to be on that. And progression system was another big one. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Artifact now has a progression system in place. Starting with, you see right here, skill rating, leveling, and balance is ultimately this theme of this blog post here that gets into the patch, essentially. But there is now a progression system that is within the game. And in fact, if you want to talk about, okay, well, actually, here,
let's go over the balance changes first, just because
want to do that? Okay.
There aren't a ton.
Yeah.
There's they definitely just addressed very few specific things, and then we can talk about the progression system and because I think that's like the bigger part, and that's the thing that's definitely going to be more bringing people back to the game, I would say.
Okay.
Or bringing new people to the game.
Well, so before we get into the actual balance changes, there's this whole multi-paragraph statement here and their idea on the whole balance. And you did bring up an interesting point last podcast that I didn't think about myself. And I brought up the idea of, eventually we'll see balances, but then your rebuttal to that, and as we kind of came to realize with Valve, was being a monetary where you could sell cards, obviously with the marketplace, and it's very relatable to a physical card game in that sense. They wanted to be as little changes as possible when it came to balance. if at all. That would absolutely be a last resort. And so that logic kind of made sense to me, because you think like Magic the Gathering, of course, a great example, the physical card game, they don't really buff and nerf cards necessarily. They just maybe ban cards from events if they're just really that stupid strong. But overall, you can't really change it in that physical card game, right? So it's understandable where they were coming from, but clearly there was many out there that had a different opinion on it. I don't know if your opinion was that way, or you were happy that they chose to do that mentality before these changes ultimately now take place. But
you talking about, was I happy about how there was going to be this marketplace?
Yeah, exactly. There's going to be the marketplace, no balance really as a result.
Yeah, I mean, I understand where they're coming from. They do want it to be this marketplace, and in some senses, that makes a lot of, like, there's good reasoning behind that. At the same time, though, I do definitely feel like the card viability in Artifact was fairly limited. Like, I've always been somebody who doesn't like to follow the meta. I want to always be one step ahead of the meta. So generally, if I see something that's popular and good, I'm exclusively trying to figure out how to beat that. And I'm trying to figure out how to make less viable stuff viable. And so I actually have played maybe a total of like 3 games with an axe in my deck, just because I just don't want to play the card that everybody's playing. It just doesn't make any, it doesn't sound fun to me. So that being said, it does feel like 80% of my games in expert constructed are an uphill battle from like literally the flop.
Yeah.
And you know, that definitely gets old. It's definitely fun because it's super challenging. You have to figure out ways around it. And I figured out some ways around it, but it's not nearly as consistent as just running Axe, Legion, you know, Sorla, PA every single game, or the Kana, etc., Salamene Storm deck. Like those ones, it just feels like every single time you start the game, no matter what the flop is, no matter what your hand is, you're gonna have the advantage. And so playing against those was getting a little bit old. That being said, with these changes and the fact that they are going back on that, it does show a large amount of flexibility on Valve's part, because it does feel like they're opening themselves up to some significant backlash and potentially just like completely shafting themselves, because they're going to leave a lot of money on the table by doing this.
That's a very good point right there that you made at the very end. They're ultimately showing by making this change and making a point that's what this whole, again, you can read the blog post for yourself, but essentially that's what this is saying. They came to the realization, especially with the outcry from the community, that, okay, you know what, we probably are going to have to sacrifice our marketplace, which, yes, every transaction, they make a small amount of money from every single transaction that happens, so ultimately that adds up to a large sum of money, but when you're changing and nerfing and buffing cards, you know, that is going to hurt the economy of the marketplace, which was, again, the biggest reason why they didn't want to do it. But the outcry and everything clearly got to them and made them rethink things, and they came to the conclusion that for the healthiness of the game, for the better of the game, that was the better decision to ultimately go towards, okay, maybe let's be a little more flexible in terms of making balance. Real quickly before we go into the balance again, as far as my take on the whole situation, I really didn't. I go back to I didn't really care that much. However, if it was going to stick to the model in terms of what they were going for as of before today, with no really balance changes unless it absolutely was 100% necessary, I was just looking forward to then the next set. That for me was going to be the biggest thing, because that's where the balancing would take place with the next set of cards that comes out. The new cards, you know, I brought up an example, something like more improvement removal is going to be in the next set, because right now there's very little improvement removal, and for cards like Cheating Death, that's one of the biggest reasons I feel like why it's a very, very, very strong card in the end. So the next set ideally would bring more improvement removal, and then that would kind of shift the meta. That's how Magic the Gathering works, you know, a paper card game that has basically no balancing within it. Instead, that's kind of the balancing. But the fact that they're doing this, though, I am excited for it. I do think it's a lot more flexible, obviously, and it's going to bring back even a lot of players that were deterred by such idea from the very beginning. So
yeah. Okay, yeah. Let's get into the card changes.
I was gonna say we can talk about this back and forth for a while, but I know people that are tuning in, I'm sure you have maybe seen this by now yourselves, but to kind of reiterate, of course. So starting at the top here, Axe is the first one. Can't say anyone's really surprised at this one. Axe getting the nerf. So his stats were changed from 7 to 11 to 6 to 10. So -1 health, -1 damage is what we're looking at here.
Yep.
He still has Berserker Skull, which is frankly one of the strongest ability cards in the game, in my opinion. So still a very rare, worthy hero, and still very, very strong. But I think for me, this is what I kind of expected if they were to nerf Axe.
Yeah, I think the biggest change about this is just the fact that he's losing 1 damage, because it's going to mean that he can't just instant kill like probably another like 10 or 15 of the heroes that he could before. He's still going to be super strong, because I think that the strongest thing about Axe, honestly, is the 2 armor, because it combos so well with Duel and it combos so well with Berserker's Call, and it just means that he's like the only hero in the entire game except for Mozzie who doesn't just eventually get chipped down by creeps.
Mm-hmm.
Every other hero in the entire game gets chipped down by creeps eventually.
That's
and
true.
Axe does not. And so a lot of the time, at least in my experience, I would essentially always just have to abandon the lane that Axe was in, because I couldn't reliably get him low enough to actually kill him eventually. So the 2 armor is still going to make sure that he can do that. So he's definitely still very good. He's definitely still one of the best cards in the game, but he's just not quite as OP. And I think that a lot of these changes are kind of right along with that vein.
Yeah, that's interesting to point to bring up, because exactly, this doesn't actually address that necessarily. He still has that great aspect to him, and I think the biggest thing too to remember is that it is a rare card. It has that rare value to it. So the fact that it is going to be still stronger than most other cards in the game, especially when it comes to the red heroes, that's not surprising in the end. Yeah, I still see Axe as being a hero that many people will build these red decks around. I don't think that changes here, but yes, the Berserker's Call is a little less value now, as he got you specifically with that damage. So next one on the list, Bloodseeker. Now this is kind of interesting, because just earlier today you happened to make a post even on Reddit, I think you said, and you brought it up in the Artifact Alchemy Discord that we have, on heroes that you think maybe are underappreciated, I guess is a good way to put it, and Bloodseeker was basically on top of your list. Well, I think he's going to be a little more appreciated now, because he got some decent buffs right here. Goes from a 7/6 to a 7/7, as well as that Blood Rage spell. The mana cost changed from 5 to 4 now instead. So, a couple of buffs.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that this hero is bottom 4 win rate, like across all formats or something like that. So, clearly one of the worst heroes in the game. According to pretty much how everybody was playing him.
Yeah.
And what I was saying is basically that I think he's a lot more situationally good against certain types of decks. And I don't know, this the 1 extra health definitely is going to help him a lot. I don't think it really doesn't change too much.
Yeah.
Like, he still dies to every red hero.
Nope, not to Axe anymore.
All the yeah, actually that's true. He doesn't die to Axe. He dies to Legion. He dies to Bristle. But then again, who doesn't die to those heroes?
Not
right?
to Centaur. Not the Tide Hunter.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice. I don't think it's that big of a deal. The Blood Rage is definitely a bigger deal, because it gives him, more importantly than the 4 damage, it gives him a 4 mana silence, which is, on the same level as Gust. It makes it significantly better situationally than Active Defiance by Rix, which is a 5 mana silence. But they're basically the same card, except for one has the utility of giving damage, or the downfall of giving damage potentially. But yeah, I think the changes are good. I think that the hero is probably slightly more viable, but people will probably ignore it anyway.
That's fair. Now that you mention that, actually, I guess this might not be enough to all of a sudden be like, you know what? It is, at the same time, it is maybe one of those where, obviously coming from the Dota background, there are changes that happen like that all the time in Dota, where it almost reminds you that the hero's there, right? It's like, this wasn't necessarily something that's going to make it overpowered or be like, holy crap, this is stupid strong now. It's more of like, you know what, that hero does exist. We kind of forgot about that hero for a while. Let's try it out again. Go figure, he happens to be really strong all of a sudden. So it could have that factor.
Yeah, I think the most important factor actually is, okay, so if they gave him 1 more damage, let's say if they gave him 1 more damage and 1 more health, then he'd have 8 damage, and then he would probably be overpowered because he can basically kill every hero in the game, except for like a select few, and then regen all of his health, which is really strong. But if they gave him like 8 health, for example, that might also make him too strong because then he like can't die. But giving him the 1 extra health, now that I think about it, is actually very good because if you put a cloak on him, then he has 11, and 10 health threshold is a pretty significant one because that is where PA can one-shot you.
Yeah. Yeah, Bounty Hunter's the only one that can kill you then with a Janata proc at that point, yeah.
Yeah, so that's actually, if you have a cloak and you're up against a Bounty Hunter and they don't get the Janata proc, then you can kill that. If you're up against a PA, you can't kill the PA, but you don't die to the PA either.
All right, well, this is the one that I think is, obviously the most debate, most conversation. And yeah, even for me, somebody that wasn't really sure about the balance changes, this was one card that I would not have mind seeing get hit by the nerf bat, because there have, as anyone else, there's definitely been some frustrating games where it's just like, really, that happened? Three rounds in a row, the hero survives every single round, and now
there was no response because it happened during combat, right? So you couldn't actually respond to this card, which is, for me, the biggest problem.
And the lack of improvement removal. I go back to that concept earlier. That I think is ultimately helps make this card stupid powered too. I can't say I saw them hitting it this hard though. I had some I had some ideas as far as where they would go if they were to nerf it, but yeah, because so to clarify, it's not only 4 mana cost, so a buff right there technically, but it no longer has the whole percentage chance or anything. Instead, it just has a cooldown where every round you can give a death shield to something, so it prevents them from dying. I mean,
one unit,
and only on 1 unit. So it's like you now just guarantee
only if there's a green out hero in the lane.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Well, I mean, technically that's how it worked before too, but
right.
So yeah, you can save that 1 hero, sure, now on command, but the creeps all just die no matter what. Now, obviously, any other heroes in the lane potentially do die too, and so it's. Yeah, it definitely hit the power level of this card quite a bit, and I think we're going to see cheating death a lot less now as a result.
Yeah, and I mean, once we go on to the Drow in the next change, they basically just made the Salamani Storm deck not viable anymore.
Really, you think so? Hit it that hard? Well,
yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to take a look at Drow then, I suppose. And Gust now works to where it only works on the ally neighbors. This round as far as the enemy hero that you're targeting, so no longer just silences everything in the lane no matter where they're at. It has to do based on positioning, so that randomness can definitely play a much bigger factor now. Pseudo randomness, I guess you can call it too, obviously depending on creeps that are going out of lane, if you place a hero there and knowing what's there beforehand. Point is, this was a bit of a hit, and you're suggesting this is actually a pretty big one.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty huge deal, just because, I mean, okay, so saying that Salamani Storm is completely dead is probably wrong, but it's definitely not the best deck in the game anymore, because you can reliably silence 1 hero, but if you see that the combo is probably coming, you just put a couple of heroes there, and then if there's, as long as there's like a creep in between one of the heroes and the other hero, then you're guaranteed to be able to respond to just being silenced. Mm-hmm. So that was the biggest thing, is like, okay, on literally turn 2, somebody can just make you have 0 response, and you just have to sit there passing for like 5 minutes while they just cast all of their spells. And that's not very fun gameplay either. So I think a lot of this is just kind of like getting rid of the unfun parts of the gameplay, which is, to be honest, what Valve has always done with Dota as well. So yeah.
And you're right. Cheating death was at the top of the list. Drow and Axe, and we're obviously next in line. I think more so Drow, especially with the Gust, is as you put it, it's not really a fun card to play against. Berserker's Call, it's like, okay, it's understandable, it happened, whatever. But yeah, just not being able to play cards at all is very, very frustrating mechanic in itself. So yeah, definitely took a hit right there. This next one, an item buff, and quite the item buff, in my opinion.
Really good.
Out of everything that changed this patch, this really caught me off guard the most, and I'm sure a lot of people. Jasper Daggers, frankly, was pretty bad before, only +2 attack, but it pierced, which means it goes through armor, of course. It cost 7 gold on top of that. So, against a couple of heroes, it potentially could have been decent, sure. But now, it not only does that, but they reduced it to 5 gold. But then on top of that, it now has a purge effect where you can purge the hero that you're, or it's a select hero choice, right? Yeah, you literally get to just choose somebody to purge.
No, it's from the equipped hero.
Is it a?
Yeah. Purge your opponent's effects from equipped hero. So whoever you use it on gets purged.
Oh, okay. So it's a defensive mechanic.
Yeah.
I read that wrong initially. Okay. That's still really strong though. It's kind of a defensive tool mixed in with the offense. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a response tool. And remember how Dota used to have this very cheap item that had a purge on it, and they removed that because it was way too strong, and they removed basically all of the purges in the game of Dota because they were way too strong, and now the only heroes that have purges are way too strong. So I think that this is a pretty much auto include in like every single deck, if you ask me.
5 gold.
Yeah, that's another big thing, is like it's only 2 gold more than the
short sword.
Short sword.
Yeah,
gives you the same attack and Pierce, which is really good against a lot of the meta decks, which involve Axe and Legion.
Yeah.
And even Treant Protector, who gives armor to his allies. And I mean, a purge. It's one of 2 purges in the game now. And that was actually one of the worst things, is that there was a purge card, but most of the time, if you wanted to use it, your hero is either stunned or silenced, and so you couldn't actually even use it on yourself. So it's completely useless.
Mm-hmm.
This means that you can actually, I'm stunned, I'm silenced, I just purged that with this equip, because you can always equip stuff.
So in a sense, a more of a nerf to a hero like a Drow Ranger. So she obviously got even nerfed more herself as a result of this the Jasper Dagger's change right there. Yeah. Yeah, very interesting. It has to be. Yeah, no, this has to be in every deck now, because like you said, I didn't even think about the whole stuns and silencing on top of that. I assume it purges stuns as well. Like it just will purge anything at that point. So
counters Tide, counters Drow, counters
Beastmaster with the Primal Roar. Yeah, that's a lot. Wow, I'll say even better than I realized initially. Okay, next here on the list we got Lion. Lion's interesting. His Finger of Death, which is the 8 piercing damage to a unit of choice. Now it does the same, but it has this new mechanic called Quicken. They added this wording for this patch, which essentially means it reduces the cooldown by 1. It cannot go below 1 though if the game lasts that long enough. So, initially it's 4 cooldown if I'm not mistaken. And then it becomes a 3 cooldown, and then a 2 cooldown, and then 1. But I mean, by that time, obviously you're pretty late in the game. But still, it makes Lion that much more useful in the later game, I suppose, is the ultimate idea right here. But
yeah, I'm trying to think. Okay, so it has a 4-turn cooldown, so you can use it on mana 7, right? And then you can use it again on mana 10 or 11.
7 and then 8, 9, 10, yeah, and then 10 and then 12 and then 13 and every turn after that.
Right, and so I mean, what games are really going that far? But late game Lion, pretty good, I guess.
it helps, not helps, but it does fit the Dota theme a little bit more with that change that it just made, right? With the whole stacking damage now every time you use Finger of Death in Dota, and you get the plus damage to it. So it's kind of not the same concept, but I suppose it's like a stacking thing. The more you use it, the more useful it'll become throughout the game.
It's probably like a decent tech card in like a black-blue control deck or something, because Mana Drain's pretty good for control. And then if you're trying to just extend the game as long as possible, maybe to like draw your Bolts of Damocles or something like that, then, I mean, 8 piercing damage is ridiculously strong.
Mm-hmm.
Piercing damage is like one of the most powerful mechanics in the game. And there's nothing that has 8 except for Lion's Finger.
Assassinate is 10 piercing damage.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. That's true.
I like me my sniper in my draft, so that's why I know that off the top of my head. Whenever I see me sniper, get that guy. All right, so OD is the next one on the list. Simple change, but 4-6 to 4-7. OD has been widely considered the worst hero in Artifact since the beginning. This doesn't feel like something that's going to all of a sudden shoot him through the roof and become a valuable pick, but they're trying. I think it's one of those, again, like, guys, this hero does exist. Maybe try it out. Maybe try his card. Because I saw somebody run it in a tournament the other day, and I don't know. It seems like it has potential. The 50% chance on mana back is one thing, but the more the Astral Imprisonment, the idea of stunning something, both defensively or offensively, is an interesting mechanic to me. So I think there's potential there.
Yeah, I was actually listening to the new BTS podcast about Artifact, and they were talking about how OD is definitely situationally viable in draft, and just because like if there is one hero in the lane and you just cast Astral on it, then you basically have gusted the lane, right? So it's pretty cheap too.
So OD, very minor change there, but we'll see on the long run. Timbersaw. Timbersaw's the last one on the list of the balance changes here. His reactive,
this one's good.
You like it? The reactive armor, and now instead of it also obviously does what it did before with the 1 armor each attacker. It then gives the defenders, the attackers have -1 armor on top of that. So everything attacking Timbersaw also, it's not even what he's attacking; it's just everything that's attacking him gets -1 armor. That's really interesting. I didn't even realize that initially.
So pick a fight. Ventriloquy value has gone significantly up with Timbersaw. And I think this hero is reasonably good. I think that Whirling Death is actually pretty insane because it's only 2 mana, and I don't know. I bet there's some pretty. Red blue has become a very popular archetype, right?
Yeah.
Recently, I think that Timbersaw seems like a pretty good include in that.
Yeah, I was watching the We Play tournament that's just started. Speaking of that earlier today, and yeah, we saw a lot of red blue. In that event. No Timbersaws, but
no, mostly Tide, right? Tide and Beast or
Axe, I believe we were seeing a little bit of Tide. Yeah, obviously Axe, Legion Commander, I want to say. Yeah. I don't know about Beastmaster, maybe, but let's look back at that. So yeah, that was the last of the balance changes on the list. So I think it's fair to say they took care of especially the big ones. Cheating Death was absolutely the big one. Then you had the Drow and Axe changes. Off the top of my head, Kana did not get touched. She's another one that I know was maybe a little bit concerning and is probably like the 3rd most powerful hero. You could say the 3rd most valuable, definitely, as far as purchasing goes.
Yeah.
Is she needing a nerf, though? I mean, that's I guess, the ultimate question. And should we expect one?
I feel like there's at least some pretty decent tools to deal with Kana, because you can just ignite her lane, and then she's pretty useless without the Emissary of the Quorum.
Yeah,
but at the same time, she's definitely maybe if she lost like 2 health or something like that, it would be a little bit more reasonable. But
12 life is a lot.
12 is a lot. I mean, it's more than everybody but Tide and Centaur, right?
Yeah,
I think.
I believe so. Yeah, 12's a lot.
Yeah. One last point about Cheating Death, I saw somebody in chat saying, is that you can technically keep a hero alive forever in a lane if you want to.
The new one, yeah.
Which is pretty strong. Like, you put that with a Drow lane, you're always going to have the Drow aura, for example, or you put it with a Kana and you're always going to have the creep spawning in that lane. So that's pretty good. Or a Venomancer, for example. But it's definitely worse than it was, for sure.
Oh yeah, it's worse than it was, and that's the thing. The biggest thing to remember. Yeah, obviously they didn't want to just kill the card completely, and this is a lot. The biggest frustration with the card before was no doubt the randomness to it, like the fact that just randomly, creeps would survive, heroes would survive. It's not a guarantee, but it's one of those that felt like it happened more than not. Right? No response, really. Yeah, it's
like even if you're killing stuff from another lane and it doesn't kill, then you're like, oh. Okay, Thunder God's Wrath 4 heroes, and all of them are still alive because reasons.
Because gameplay.
Yeah.
All right, so those are the balanced ones. Obviously, we're not going to go over every hero and be like, oh, this is what we want to change. It's just, we know now. We know that they're willing to make changes, and we'll look out for them. I mean, I think it's fair to say I don't expect it to be very frequent by any means. Yeah. This is more of a... okay, we realized initially maybe some cards were a little too powerful. We'll tone them down, and also, bring up a couple that we feel like should be played that aren't getting the attention. So,
yeah, it definitely could open a can of worms a little bit. It's like, okay, well, what is Reddit going to complain about next? And
yeah, that's my worry. That is my worry.
Like, as long as they don't do what they do to Dota, and Dota is completely different because, like, the whole point is to drastically change things and shake things up. But you know, this is a card game where you want to build strategies, and you don't want the cards just like being completely in flux the entire time that you're trying to, you know, create a deck. Because I feel like creating a deck and iterating on a deck is something that you can do for like months before you actually have it perfected.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Dota's a lot more about mechanical skill too, obviously, and so that itself you can rely on, you know, being a different. Where, you know, with the card game such as Artifact, it's more about that deck building and the strategy, and there are just so many avenues that you can go, especially in a game like Artifact. So yeah, they're constantly shifting it. It's one, it's going to be way too overwhelming for new players and inexperienced players. And two, it's probably going to be frustrating for the masses, even, I would assume. So yeah, no, that was not to be negative on it, because obviously all this is great, but that went through my mind as well. As like, ah, crap, you know, does this mean Reddit is going to have all this power now of making these posts and getting these massive voters, and all of a sudden they're making more changes because, oh well, Reddit wanted these changes, so here you go, guys. So you know, hopefully it won't get too out of hand, but hey, this start is fantastic, and I'm glad that they did what they did, of course. That leads us into now obviously the other big part of this patch was the progression system. So we are getting what we had hoped for, and many others. And just kind of scrolling through this, it's called the Path of Glory. Build your legend. I don't know what they're going. Build a legend, I guess, what the title of this all is. But essentially, they're adding the progression system in game, where it'll include things like weekly bonuses, where it's if you win 3 matches a week in any kind of matchmaking. I believe that means Call to Arm games as well. Yeah, so Call to Arms, just any kind of matchmaking. You win 3 games that week, you get 1,000 experience. Now, what does that mean? At least at level 1, you have 500 experience. I know that. So you win 3 games for the initial week, you're going to get level 2 and go on from there.
Yeah. And they added the ability to earn packs and tickets in a different way, which is one of the biggest things.
You know what I'm showing here on the website, but let me just show you in the game. Let me just do that real quick, because I am logged in here. So this is what it looks like now for those that aren't familiar. In fact, here, I need to move this to the right. Obviously, here's my icon. I have 14 experience right now because I actually played 1 game. I played 1 game and I lost my 1 game. Go figure. So it seems like they're not giving you much experience for a loss, because somebody else of mine, we had a viewer actually, he said he won his first game and he hit level 2 as a result from just winning 1 game. So it really incentivizes winning. Now, from my understanding, I believe the levels do scale as far as the amount of experience you need. So 500 for the first level, of course, it's going to go fast, but every level it will scale a little bit.
Yeah, that would make sense.
As you progress on. I don't know 100%, but I believe that's how it works. But yeah, as you're talking about the card pack, so as you notice here with the rewards, every 2 levels for the first up to 16 levels, you get card packs as well as a ticket. Ultimately, I believe they said it was, what, 16 card packs in total for the first, let's see, 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 15. 15 card packs total and 15 tickets then, I believe. So you get 15 card packs and 15 tickets just from getting to level 16, which...
That's $30 value every single time you complete that. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Now...
And honestly, this plus the new ladder system, like... There's actually no reason to ever spend money on Artifact if you don't want to.
No, this is the answer to the free-to-play spammers. Yeah. This is the answer to the people that were bitching about, I get to play every other game for free. Why can't I play yours for free, you know?
Yep.
So, yeah, it absolutely exists now. That's great to see. And obviously, I will definitely take advantage of this. I wasn't as, like, adamant about needing a free-to-play system personally, but... Of course, I'm going to love this. And these are like little portraits and icons that you can get as well throughout the leveling. Now, to be clear, so with the progression system, though, it doesn't reset, does it? I don't think it does. It's the ladder that resets, I assume.
Yeah, I don't think the level... I don't know, actually.
So, because if that's the case, see, if the progression system doesn't reset, then you can't go infinite.
I believe that they said that the packs are every season. I'm pretty sure that's the wording on the website, is that every season you can earn up to 15 packs.
Okay.
Let's see. Reaching certain tiers grants levels and icons to show the world that you've accomplished, while others grant card packs or tickets up to 10 of each this season. So it's not even 10, it's 15, Valve. Do your math.
That is funny.
But so what it does look like to me is, if you notice, not all of the heroes are represented in these icons, not all of the units. So it sounds like this season, these are the ones that you could be, and the next season, it'll be other ones, and other packs and other event tickets.
Yeah, up to 15 of each this season. I'm reading it right now. This says this season. So I suppose the progression does reset. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so because there's a progression system and then there's a ranking system, a ladder system from 1 to 75 is the skill rating system that we're looking at. Everyone starts at 1. The biggest thing with this, too, is that you can't go down in rank. Somewhat similar to Hearthstone. I believe in Hearthstone you can at the later levels. You can actually start going down if you get a massive amount of losses, but it makes it so ideally you keep on climbing, and that's the same concept here. Ultimately, you know, as long as you play enough, you'll get there. It's just a matter of how quickly you get to said level.
Right.
So, and this will have ladders and its own thing. I don't know. And do you get prizes from this? Actually, I forgot to double check that. I don't know if this actually has prizes in itself.
Seasonal ratings. During a season, once you've earned a skill rating, you'll never lose it. In a few months, a new season will begin. Ratings will reset, giving you fresh opportunities.
Doesn't look like it.
Yeah, I don't see anything.
So this is more just about the pride thing, which again is fine. That's obviously a lot of other games have. Dota, for example, of course.
Yeah, I assume I'm a little bit confused why they didn't just include like a leaderboard with this update. I assume there will probably be one on like Artibuff or something like that pretty quickly.
With the API.
It is just a little bit weird that they're introducing this, the ability to see like, okay, people are ranks. Why not just have a leaderboard? It's not like it is like a ladder, which they don't want, but at the same time, it's like they have it's there, so it's like, why not?
Kind of. Like you said, I assume Artibuff is going to take care of that anyways, or the API is there.
Artibuff will do it. And then Valve will be like, "Oh, okay,
yeah,
people actually
maybe we should do that too." You know, for all it's one of those things that's like they didn't have enough time to work on that specific side of it. They wanted to get this out though, obviously, which is understandable in itself. So yeah, again, this game is still always changing, can always be improved and stuff like that. This quality of life changes. I'm sure it could potentially be coming too, but okay, I think we covered it though. So again, people got what they wanted. This is a great patch for the game, the health of the game moving forward, and to be honest, you know, I know you were feeling similar to myself in that it's like we're enjoying playing this game, but man, it sucks just seeing what all these people are saying, and a lot of the, you know, from Reddit to the community in general and their perception of the game, and because we know it's a great game, it's just unfortunately it was getting a lot of flack for some good reasons, like I said. Others was just way over the top and completely unnecessary. But hey, you know what? They've answered it, for good or not, in the long run, but they have, and it is absolutely good, at least for now.
Yeah, and I mean, it also just proves that they're willing to put in the work, like we expected them to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not like Valve is going to work on a game for 4 years, release their first game in 8 years,
and then just be
let
like,
it die after a
month. We fucked up, guys. All right, see ya.
Zero chance that happens.
Yeah, right. No, it's things are good, and this is just the beginning. Again, obviously, the game has literally only been out for like a month now, as far as officially actually out for a month. So,
what are you talking about? It's been out for half an hour.
That's true.
We were in beta. We were in beta before.
That was beta. That's a good point.
That was the open beta.
This is
you had to pay to get into, and this is the real artifact.
Early access, or is this actually the retail? Is this actually the launch? I don't know.
We'll decide when the next patch comes out.
Yeah, that's fair. So yeah, there you go, guys. Again, got what we wanted in a lot of ways. So hopefully, you know, this podcast was helpful to not only help you guys learn about the patch if you didn't know about it already for whatever reason, but also give our insight and get a better understanding of what's going on with the patch. But I think that's good to wrap up, though. So, Elevate, anything else before we do?
Go grind some games. I'll see you out there.
I'm already ready to queue up myself here on my other monitor. So wrapping this up now, guys. Thanks as always for tuning in to the Artifact Alchemy podcast. I know obviously we haven't been doing a ton of content since our launch here, but it's stuff like this. More reason to now put the grinding in with the new year. I think it's safe to say expect plenty more to come. and enjoy the game with us, and enjoy the game with us in our Discord. I know I've been running a lot more tournaments as well lately, and stuff. So look forward to plenty more to come. All right, just wrapping it up though. I was joined by Elevated, of course, myself, Breaky CPK. Until next time, guys, enjoy the re-release, you can say, of Artifact. We know we will be. Have a good night.